Welcome to the kitchen table, where the jankiest Magic the Gathering decks battle it out for glory, but most of all for your viewing pleasure. And to make it even extra fun, we have a little leaderboard, where the winner will win a Modern Horizons 2 Collector Booster, thanks to our partner Cardmarket. To participate in this leaderboard, there's only one thing you need to do, and that is predict the winner of the next match and leave it in the comments below. We will announce the next match at the very end of this video, so stay with us until the end. But now sit back and relax, and let's ask Bram which two decks will enter the arena this time.
Welcome in the Battle of the Planeswalkers, where Dakkon will face Geyadrobe Dihada. Let's find out what the decks have in store for us. Dakkon Shadow Slayer will venture in the dungeon together with Zephyris and Barrowin of Clan Undur. This is a deck built around the mechanic of venture in the dungeon, and of course we have a lot of dungeon cards like the Triumphant Adventurer, Yuan-Ti Malison, Displacer Beast and Cloister Gargoyle. The arch enemy of Dakkon is of course Geyadrobe Dihada, an evil Grixis planeswalker that has some companions like the Willbreaker to steal all the stuff of your opponent. And this Willbreaker likes us to target things with Puppeteer, with Arc Lightning, targeting 3 things at once, and then we can sacrifice them in the Goblin Bombardment or with, for example, a Skullport Merchant.
Fight!
And let's start with Dakkon versus Geyadrobe. We first look at the hand of Geyadrobe Dihada. She's playing with some nice green Dragon Shield sleeves, and I see a Willbreaker. I see 2 Willbreakers. There's a Puppeteer and there's also a Vampiric Rides in the hand of Geyadrobe and some lands. So now let's look at Dakkon's hand. There's a Cloister Gargoyle. I already see some lands as well. There is the amazing Archleech as well, and a Triumphant Adventurer. It's going to be evil versus extreme evil, with Dakkon starting with a land and Geyadrobe also a tap land. On the second turn we have a Triumphant Adventurer, a 1/1 with Death Touch that when it attacks you venture into the dungeon, and it also gets first strike. Another land from Geyadrobe. The Grixis player starts quite slow and the first damage is done, but most importantly we are going to the Lost Mines of Vandelver and we're going to scry, and that card is going to the bottom or on top. Oh, it's Dakkon Blackblade. Is it going to the bottom? Dakkon is on top, of course. Alright, back to Geyadrobe Dihada. And the Adventurer won't untap. Here is a Dimir Signet for some ramp, setting up for the Willbreakers, of course. Now let's see what Dakkon is going to play. Here is Dakkon Shadow Slayer. Comes into the battlefield with 3 counters, and for a +1 we can surveil 2, or it minus exiles a creature. We're going to surveil 2 cards, stay on top. I think it's going to be 2 lands, and we head back to Geyadrobe. And she now has 5 mana available, and some mana is being tapped for Immersturm Predator, a vampire dragon with flying that you can also make indestructible. And there's also a Vampiric Rides, so a very explosive turn from Geyadrobe, setting up for a Willbreaker on the next turn. And now we head back to the land of Dakkon. A lot of options. I see a Displacer Beast, I also see a Cloister Gargoyle, but we're going back to the mines because the Adventurer is going on an adventure. one treasure token coming up. And of course there's an attack with the 1/1 first strike death touch. What is the dragon doing? Is he blocking? No, he's not, of course. That would be lethal. And 1 damage for Geyadrobe Dihada. Now I'm really curious to see those will breakers in action. But first we're going to see, what is it going to be? It's going to be a displacer beast. So we venture further into the dungeon, gaining 1 life and making Geyadrobe lose 1 life. Then we're going to we're going to exile the dragon. And that's a nice play. Now here is first bushmeat poacher. That's a 2/4 that you can use to sacrifice a creature. Then you draw a card and you gain life equal to the creature's toughness. So setting up for those will breakers. Now a attack with the adventurer. 1 damage is dealt. Displacer beast is drawn and the mines are cleared. So the next dungeon is ready and the adventurer still has some energy left. Let's see what's next. Here is a cloister gargoyle and that's now a 3/4 with flying, and we will venture again in the dungeon, and this time we're going to the dungeon of the Mad Mage, gaining 1 life first through the yawning portal. So the board is already getting quite complex, and we're going to have 3 mana tapped, and that's for a thorough investigation. This enchantment makes clue tokens when we attack, and when we sacrifice a clue token we will also venture into a dungeon. Dakkon is going to do some surveil action. I see a land and a creature and they will stay on top, and a gargoyle and displacer beast on defense. And here is also a fluffy displacer beast. Hello Cookie. I think she's going to help Geyadrobe a bit because she's behind. But now here is Woe Strider, and that's a horror creature with escape that can also sacrifice creatures to scry, and of course it brings along a goat. Now it ain't over yet because we're also going to see a puppeteer enter the battlefield. That's just a 1/2, but it can tap or untap creatures, so it can target creatures, and that's really important for the will breaker. Now let's see what the adventurer has in store for us. There's now also a flying gargoyle. So Dakkon can really start to put the pressure on, get the value engine rolling. He can venture more deeper into the dungeon to get more perks. But first he will play Midnight Spotlighter, a 2/3, and creatures you control can't be blocked except by legendary creatures, and whenever 1 or more creatures deals combat damage we will go deeper into the dungeon of the Mad Mage. So we have an attack now from our 3 creatures. The Triumphant Adventurer first, so we can scry, and then of course we create a clue token from the thorough investigation, and we will venture further into the dungeon where we will encounter Cookie the fluffy displacer beast. And some damage has been dealt, of course, because of the Midnight Spotlighter. The creatures couldn't be blocked except by legendary creatures. Now Dakkon is going to sacrifice a clue to draw another card, and we venture further into the dungeon. So first some scry action and then drawing another card. Now still some surveil action. So let's see what stays on top. Both cards stay on top, and then I think it's going to be passed to Geyadrobe Dihada. This Planeswalker is on 9 life, but now here is the big payoff card. Here is Will Breaker. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of a spell or ability you control, gain control of that creature for as long as you control the Will Breaker, and we have a Puppeteer that can target tapped creatures, and the Will Breaker is going to hypnotize the Pathlighter, meaning now we can venture in the dungeon ourselves. Geyadrobe can go to the dungeon, and the Bushmeat Poacher is attacking Dakkon. No blocks, of course, possible. Because of the Midnight Pathlighter, we're now also going to venture in the dungeon. And here is the Lost Mind of Van Delver. So we're going to do some scry action. Still no Geyadrobe Dihada inside. A land is being scryed to the bottom. And here is a black equipment called Thieves Tools. This creates a treasure and you can equip it. And then equipped creatures can't be blocked as long as its power is 3 or less. Now I still have no idea how this game is going to evolve. An attack by the Adventurer and the Cloister Gargoyle. We get the clue token. We're going further into the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Going to exile 2 cards. And we can play them. We play a temple first. And then we also bounce the Will Breaker. That's a nice play, but first going to sacrifice the Pathlighter in the Woe Strider. Scry a card to the bottom. And Will Breaker goes back into the hand, slowing down Geyadrobe a bit. And the Grixis Planeswalker needs to take more damage. She's going now to 5. Now we still can use Dakkon, of course, to surveil. We can also sacrifice a clue to draw a card. It's another Cloister Gargoyle. So those flyers could be annoying. Will Breaker needs to take care of them. Luckily there's still a Puppeteer to help. Now let's see what the draw is. It's going to be a Smoldering March that comes into play tapped. Because Geyadrobe only has 1 basic land. Here is the return of Will Breaker, of course. Now the Puppeteer can still tap some creatures, or at least 1 creature. Probably going to be one of those annoying flyers. One of those Cloister Gargoyles, or maybe the Triumphant Adventurer, because he keeps going further into the dungeon. Let's see what's going to happen. Geyadrobe passes the turn. And back to Dakkon with 5 cards in hand. That's of course a lot of cards. And here is Hamma Pashar Rune Seeker for more value, because room abilities of dungeons you own now trigger twice. So that next time we're going to go into a dungeon, we're going to scry 3 times twice. Puppeteer takes control of the Gargoyle. There is another venture into the dungeon with the thorough investigation. So we're going to scry twice. Now we're going to draw some cards. The Gargoyle is going to block and then be sacrificed to the Bushmeat Poacher. 4 life has been gained. A card has been drawn. It's a land. And meanwhile, the Adventurer has reached the Mad Wizard's lair. We're going to draw 3 cards. We can play one of them without paying its mana cost. We can do this twice because of Hamma Pashar. So this is not a value train anymore. This is a whole factory of value trains. Precipitous drop on Will Breaker, taking care of the evil wizard. And then even some more cards. What is going to be played? Here is Arcerarak, the Archleech, and that means we're going into a new dungeon. I think we're going to the Tomb of Annihilation. And by the end of this game, I think we're going to see all the dungeons. Because this dungeon deck is really putting the pressure on, is really gaining a lot of value by venturing in all the dungeons. Because we're going to do this twice, of course, because of Hama. Dakkon now even has too many cards in hand. Now there's still a Will Breaker. And if we draw, for example, an Arc Lightning, that could really change the game. Now we still have some surveil action. I think Dakkon surveilled a card too much. But let's keep it casual. And we head back to Geyadrobe. Let's see if she can find an answer. If the Grixis Planeswalker will appear herself. No, that's not a Planeswalker. But here is another Will Breaker. Oh, but it's countered. The gate has been barred. That was an evil play from Dakkon. The only counter spell in the deck takes care of the most important threat from Geyadrobe Dihada's deck. The balance now has shifted even more in favor of Dakkon and his dungeon venturing adventurers. And the turn has been passed back to Dakkon with still a lot of cards in hand. Now Dakkon is sacrificed to exile the Bushmeat Poacher, but in response Vampiric Rites is going to be used to draw a card and gain a life. So that wasn't the best play from Dakkon. But the card drawn is another land, and that's not what Geyadrobe needs. Now we are setting up for another attack, of course. There's still thorough investigation to create some clue tokens. There is Hama Pashar. And we put a fly on the Displacer Beast, making a flying kitten. There's another flying Cloister Gargoyle. And here is the god of the dungeon. Here is the Atropal, a legendary god horror token. It's a 4/4 with Death Touch. And the third dungeon has been cleared. We have seen all the dungeons. Here is Arcerarak, the Archleech. And this time he will stick around, but we're going back to the Tomb of Annihilation. And with Hama Pashar, a lot of pressure is put on Geyadrobe. Now the Puppeteer can still tap a Flying Displacer Beast, but Dakkon's forces are still going to approach. That card has been discarded for the Tomb of Annihilation. Still 2 life is lost because of Hama. 1 more damage is dealt because of the Adventurer, and the last turn, the miracle turn, now has to happen for Geyadrobe. Fire and Ice is the draw, but without Will Breaker, of course, it's less powerful. Tapping a creature is still possible, of course, but there are so many creatures on the board on the side of Dakkon. Although Dakkon is not around anymore, it could be that Geyadrobe won't be around anymore because it looks bad. Geyadrobe passes the turn. We draw a card, another land for Dakkon, and now we head into the combat phase first. I'm going to equip Hama Pashar. And then the attack is going to come. First the Puppeteer is going to tap. But I don't think it matters anymore. We put something on ice. Draw another card. It's another land. Geyadrobe drew too many lands, but Dakkon also had the value train going. And I think it's only fitting that Geyadrobe commits suicide by tapping her own land.
KO.
Too many lands for Geyadrobe. The win is for Dakkon.
So this was this week's match. Check out the community tab of this channel to find out where you are in the leaderboard, or learn how you can join the leaderboard by clicking on this link here. But most importantly, predict who will be the winner of the next match and leave it in the comments below. And Bram will tell us now which two decks will battle it out in the next epic match.
More Planeswalker battles next time with Chandra versus Vraska. Leave your vote in the comments below, and as always, keep it casual.